Hi guys, today we're going to be talking about two terms that are used very commonly in strength training. One of them is repetition maximum, also known as RM, and the other one is known as RII, which means reps in reserve. RM stands for repetition maximum, and it means that you can lift a specific amount of weight for one repetition only. If you were to say that you have a 1 rep max in deadlift for 100 kilos, it means that you can only lift 100 kilos in deadlift once. If you have a 3 repetition maximum in deadlift where you can lift 85 kilos, you can lift 85 kilos in deadlift 3 times, but no more. The further down you go in terms of repetition maximum, the less hard the training will be. When we talk about RIR, it stands for reps in reserve, and that means it's the amount of reps that you have left that you could have done, but you didn't. So if you're working with a weight that has 10 repetition maximum, let's say it's your 1 rep max is 100 kilos and your 10 rep max is therefore 10 kilos, you can do 10 reps of 10 kilos specifically. If you were to then carry out 8 reps with the 10 repetition maximum, then you would have 2 repetitions in reserve. So you could have done 10, but you only did 8, which means you then have 2 left. So it's simple. 10 RM minus 8 reps equals 2 repetitions in reserve. On some occasions, it can be good to work with reps in reserve as you don't work your muscles to complete exhaustion, which can be beneficial when you need to train a lot or your training volume is high over a specific period, or maybe you're just generally training a large load or volume, and therefore you don't want to constantly stress and cause mechanical breakage to your muscles. But it's important to do it every now and then, but not every training. So you can set a bit of a higher RM and then work with lower reps. A general rule of thumb is when you lift between 1 to 6 repetition maximum or 1 to 8 repetition maximum, you are working a very heavy training, and this is where your nervous system is working the most. If you go between 6 or 8 repetition maximum to 12, then you're doing medium heavy work, whereas when you go to 12 repetition maximum and above, you're mainly just doing muscle endurance. Now these different repetition maximums, like categories, indicates whether you're working with mechanical stress or you're working with metabolic stress, but all of them are beneficial, and it can be good to vary every now and then. As I mentioned before, we have 2 forms of load training. One of them is the mechanical stress, also known as mechanical load. It's characterized by having very heavy training, so very low reps and very low repetition maximum. So heavy weight, few reps. It's an external force that is being exerted onto your body, so that would be dumbbell, barbell, kettlebell, any sort of weight that you can lift and carry. So it's characterized by external force. The mechanical stress or the mechanical load does mechanical breakage to your muscle structure and has an effect on the muscles, the supporting tissue, the tendons, the ligaments, and the bones. Metabolic stress, on the other hand, is characterized by having high reps and low weight, so a higher repetition maximum. This would usually be around 8 to 12 and 12 plus repetition maximum, but it's characterized by, it's not the mechanical stress, but it's the muscle is met with an energy demand that is so high that it just can't keep up with it. So there's low oxygen in the muscle and there's high levels of lactate. This then does that the enzymes in the muscles get activated, and then the enzymes start to eat at your muscles, which causes these microscopic damages, yet you would see with mechanical stress, but it's just due to the enzymes and not the actual mechanical stress. You can achieve the metabolic stress in different ways, like using the training principle TUT, which is also stands for time under tension, where you do an exercise slowly, especially on the eccentric phase. You just slowly go down because that increases the working time. So that would be one way to do it. As I mentioned before, if you do low weight and high reps, that can also achieve it. You can also do static work like the plank or squat when you hold the position. You don't move, you just stay there. And last but not least, you can do occlusion training, which is where you put like bands over your muscles and then you tighten them, because then that limits the oxygen supply to the muscles. When you're doing this, you want to be careful that you're not wearing them for too long. So only put them on when you're using them. Right before the set, you tighten them, you do the set, and then you take them off and maybe shake your arms a little bit or your legs or something, but don't keep it tightened throughout the entire training session. Now that you have the knowledge of what repetition maximum and reps in reserve stand for, you can now go on to calculate and do a repetition maximum test. You don't have to do one repetition maximum if you don't want to. You can also do a test where you test out 5 repetition maximum. Therefore, you can then use that number that you have reached when you get to 5 repetition maximum, and then you can calculate your way up to 1 rep max using a calculation table. By doing this, you can sort of get an idea of where your 1 repetition maximum is if you're not testing that specifically, but you do need to bear in mind that the further down you go in terms of repetition maximum, so the larger the number gets, the more errors there's likely to be when calculating your way up to 1 rep max. But if you test in any procedure, whether it's 1 rep max, 3 rep max, or 5 rep max, you want to do a warm-up. You want to do a general warm-up, whatever you prefer. I prefer just sitting on the bike and then having a few inclines, but you can also go for a little jog or a walk. You want to do something that gets the body temperature up, that gets the oxygen flowing in the bloodstream. So just so you have that, because it increases both your mobility, but it also helps the oxygen being transported around to the body. Then you want to move on to do a specific warm-up in the required exercise. So if you were to do 1 rep max in deadlift, you do deadlift. If it's squat, you do squat in whichever exercise you would choose. But the point is that it needs to be specific. Now, the key is you don't tire yourself out, but you do need to get a few reps in just so you can feel it. So this would be if you were to go for a 50 kilo PR, like personal record, then I would recommend doing maybe 10 kilos, 15 kilos to get some reps in, but don't do it for too long. And then when you move on and you feel ready to try out your 1 repetition maximum, you want to have ideally a maximum of 5 tries, because after the 5th try, also this is individual, but generally speaking, after the 5th try, your body will be quite exhausted, and then the risk of getting injured will increase, and then it's not worth it anymore. Then you can try it another day. But generally, 5 tries maximum, and then knot it down and try another day if you don't feel up for it. And if it's good and you think, okay, yeah, that's my new PR, then note it down and keep progressing, and then do a repetition maximum test after a couple of months and see if you've improved. So that's how you conduct a repetition maximum test, and that is what the terms stand for. If you've got any questions, you can leave them down below and I'll make sure to help you guys out. If there's anything that needs clarification, I'm also the man for the job. I'll see you around. Bye-bye.